So very, very briefly, Lori Brown from Connecticut League of Conservation Voters and Margaret Miner of Rivers Alliance, who's going to talk about the water issues in the state, have made it all the way here, and take it away.
Okay. Hello. I wasn't sure I was going to make it there for a little bit. It's really slippery out. It's very pretty dry. It just took a lot longer than I thought. So Margaret and I really haven't even had a chance to can you hear me okay? Okay. Is that good? Yes. Okay, thanks. We just went through all this with the environmental summit that we had this last Thursday. So I'm Lori Brown. I'm the executive director of the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. And we're a bipartisan nonprofit 501c4. So we actually can do a lot of the political work that the traditional nonprofits cannot do. So as a result, we provide a lot of tools and pathways for the traditional nonprofits, the 501c3s that can't really engage. I'm just seeing faces now. To do things like significant lobbying at the legislature, elections, endorsements, identifying pro-environment candidates. Our entire focus is at the state policy level. So we work with all of the statewide environmental groups across Connecticut who at some point will find themselves at the state capitol. So all the main groups that are up there year to year, Nature Conservancy, Sierra Club, Audubon, Connecticut Fund for the Environment, Rivers Alliance of Connecticut, Connecticut Forest and Park, all these groups will come to the legislature year after year, pounding away at legislation that keeps the ball rolling in the right direction. If we were not up there, along with a lot of citizen advocate groups that are out here, also connecting with their lawmakers and letting them know that you expect high level of support for environmental issues in your district and in this region and across the state. So we work, like as I said, with all the statewide groups. So we don't have our own specific issue. We really try to tee up a lot of the key issues in land, water, energy, transportation, environmental funding. Particularly climate change is really the overall overarching issue right now that is clearly the biggest threat that we will all face for the rest of our lives here. And so all the things that are impacted by climate change, so our water, drought, energy usage, how we invest in renewables versus coal and more polluting sources of carbon energy, and how we protect our lands, and how we make this small state of ours very enjoyable place to live, work, and play. And so I wanted to give you a quick, just a quick recap of what happened last Thursday. Every year, right before the legislative session, we gather up all of the state's groups, and many of you I think were there, a lot of the state groups that are going to be teeing up legislation each year. And we also have lawmakers and administration officials from the governor's office, DEP, DPH, and others. And we get together before the chaos of session so that we can really tee up and present the framework for all of the big issue areas that are going to be addressed in legislation. So that at the Capitol, when things are going crazy and there's short deadlines and people are just not getting all the information they need, when a little piece of legislation comes out with no context, all the people who have come to the summit and shared information, okay, what is the reason for this little piece? Well, to understand why are we trying to pass a constitutional amendment to protect open space, for example? What does that mean and why are we doing that? And so that's the opportunity every year before session for all of us to get together, hash out some of the issues and provide context. So a lot of our legislative friends, this year we did it, we've done it now for 19 years, and every year it's gotten bigger and it's gotten more important. It's sort of a launching pad for what comes out of the summit afterwards is really a list of issues to watch for. And so this year we had very good overviews. I made everybody keep everything really tight, short, and in a very condensed time frame. So we didn't dig into the weeds, but we flashed on the big issues under water, so the statewide water plan, for example, and Margaret Miner, who's the state guru on all things water, is going to talk a little bit about where we are with the state water plan, what the big initiatives, once the plan is passed, hopefully adopted, some of the big issues that we hope will then come out of that in pieces of legislation, maybe not all this session, but moving forward, really teeing things up for more and better statewide water management and protecting that increasingly threatened resource that we have here in Connecticut. But Margaret will give much more detail on that. The other pieces of the summit that we went into with regards to land, big issues with regards to funding. There, as you know, the state budget really just basically swept and raided so many big pots of money that we as the environmental community count on to fund our programs, whether it was land, energy, water, transportation, all that. It was like a blinding, sweep of many important programs. So a lot of that took place this past session, and we know that there's more to be done there, and we have to be vigilant and make sure that all of it isn't stolen and taken and used to plug budget holes that are not related to environmental concerns. So on the land front, there were sweeps in the Community Investment Act, which is the main funding mechanism for four pieces. We have to protect that every year for farmland, open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation. It's sort of the four corners of this program. One of the few funding sources that has been remarkably successful, funded by real estate transfer fees every year, and increasingly the only secure source with funding for open space really going flat across the board since 2014. So the land community has been very active in terms of trying to come up with creative sources of funding, not only just to protect the CIA, the Investment Act, but also, and bonding being flat, but coming up with this past year a thing called the Passport to the Parks. That was maybe the one shining thing that came out of this past session. So it is a way for, it's a new source of funding based on a $10 license plate fee that everyone pays. So everyone then is putting in this pot of money that will go for parks maintenance, which basically was gutted. And the DEEP, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, has been just chopped to the bone for at least a decade or more every single year. There's nothing left to cut. And so this was a good turn of events to have that new source of funding just allowed passed, and will start to take effect as of, well, it'll take effect this year. The other important thing to know about land and land issues coming up, I had mentioned the constitutional amendment to protect open space. What the context for that is that every year, you may think your parks and your public lands and your public spaces are protected, but they are not. They are not. Every year, there's a thing called the Land Conveyance Bill. And every year, lawmakers will use that to ask for pieces of public land, your land, public land to be used for different purposes. And maybe 75% of that is normal little tiny transactions, little clips of, side of a road or an extension of a fire or school district or something, just little pieces. But every year, they use it to put pieces in that could not be given away in any other fashion. And the problem is that those pieces tend to be tacked on after all the public hearings have already happened. There's no public input, no process to review those lands. So we tried every way to figure out how to stop that from happening, but the legislators will not take that right away from themselves. It's often each of them may want a piece of land at some point going forward, so they don't mess with the other legislators' requests for their land. So a lot of terrible things have happened with the conveyance bill, to the point where the community got decided the only way to fix this was to do a constitutional amendment to put on the ballot to the next referendum, hopefully in 2018, to get on the ballot that you can all vote for, a constitutional amendment that will require the process for giving away or selling, otherwise disposing of our public land, would have to go through an individual hearing process for those individual pieces. Right now, they're all lumped together in one big omnibus bill that gets passed. You know, nobody can pull a piece out at that point. So we're trying to make sure that to do that, it has to pass by a 2/3 supermajority in the legislature in 2 consecutive sessions. So it passed in 2016, it failed in 2017, but it's coming back this year, and it has to pass this year, or we go back to square one. So that would require that, as I said, individual pieces of public trust land would not be able to be given away without going through a particular process that's an open public process. That's a very important tool. We don't, you know, it's not easy to change the state constitution. And there are, believe it or not, plenty of legislators who absolutely don't want this. They won't come out and tell you that, but they don't want to give this up. So that's one of the efforts that all the land trusts across the state, a lot of the land coalitions, and a lot of advocates are going to be pushing hard for that. The other big area is energy and climate. And so the panels that were at the summit, there's a couple of big things to watch for. And there'll be opportunities in the coming sessions, certainly, for citizens to be involved, to weigh in. I cannot say that more emphatically, that it's critical that people in this room become familiar enough with some of these issues that they are able to respond quickly. You don't have to be experts in any of this. Believe me, it takes a while to wrap your head around some of the things, even the terminology like RPS and net metering. You know, those are things that you don't have to be experts in that. You just need to know that we want to invest more in clean and renewable energy sources. It's not just about energy, it's about economy and jobs. It's about public health. It's about investment in clean technologies and in clean energy that will allow us to do our part in reducing our global warming emissions. And in energy, there's a thing called the Comprehensive Energy Strategy that is out this year. And it's moving us in the right direction. There's a lot of work to be done. The issue is that our state has a thing called, on the books, the Global Warming Solutions Act. And in that act, we have a goal of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 80% from 2001 levels by 2050. We also put in a place a reduction of, I think we're at 20% by 2020? I forgot exactly where we are in that. But there was really no interim targets to actually get us to that ultimate goal of reductions of 80%. So the big battle has been, number one, putting forward a comprehensive energy strategy that includes these interim stated goals. And out of those goals, which the comprehensive energy strategy needs to be passed by the legislature this year. It's been a lot of work that's gone into it. It's going to generate a lot of different policy pieces. And one of them will certainly be that interim target of what they're aiming for now, which they just adopted about a week ago, at 45% by 2030. So it gets us back on track because we were slow. And as part of all of these policies, in particular, you're going to see community solar. And that's a big deal for a lot of communities, particularly urban areas that cannot necessarily either have the economic wherewithal to have the investment for solar panels on their roofs, or that essentially rent, or for whatever variety of reasons can't do their own solar power. And so community solar is an effort by which there would be a solar facility developed, and then locally the community would be able to buy into that. That is not necessarily viewed on favorably by the larger utilities like Eversource, but it needs to be worked out. I mean, there are ways that we can figure out how to make this work for everyone, and that's going to be a big push. We can't underestimate that the local not huge grid scale is not the only way to go. So a lot of the advocates, and there's a big coalition of environmental and energy advocates working together to kind of pound away at this. There's a lot of information on some of the key issues that they'll be pushing. So community solar, energy efficiency is just as important as anything else we could possibly do in terms of renewable energy. And one of the things that they did was, at the legislature this past budget session, is they basically swept away huge amounts, I think 145 million or 125 million, from the energy efficiency fund. And that immediately impacts somewhere in the order of like 5,000 jobs and related energy in industry. There are numbers that are just stunning, that were just completely blocked out of any consideration from where they took the money. So one of the big things we all have to fight for is to make sure that some of that money is restored. I know everybody's like, who knows, it's just shaking their head, but we're on a good track to really make a lot of noise about that. Like I said, there's a lot of people really active. It's not just the enviros, it's a lot of businesses. There are a lot of people really pushing, and having that extra push from outside the legislature is really important. All of this information, everything that came out of the summit, all the big issues, are on our website at ctlcv.org. And I also brought our environmental scorecard, so you'll have all the contact information and the websites and everything. I have them up here if you want to take one. All of the panels, as I said, I made them really be extremely, very top line. So water, energy, land, the DEP made a presentation on their priorities. There's a session in there in particular that we put in because there was a lot of new people that showed up that have been coming out of the woodwork to get involved because they just can't stand by and watch these federal assaults on our environment and not do something about it. So you can only march in DC so many times. It's time to focus on the state legislative level. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people involved. It's easy to help out and get involved. So the first thing I would say is that you would want to go to our website, go to the summit page, and look at some of the short, they're 20-minute, 30-minute, really good, concise, layperson overviews of what's going on, what the issues are that these groups are all going to be putting in front of the legislature this session. Just on the federal note, right now, one of the big issues is offshore drilling. And there's going to be one of the BOEM meetings that is taking place in Hartford on February 13th. So I just want to plant that seed out there. If anybody is interested in doing some actions at the near the Capitol, it's in the Hartford downtown Marriott, where we know that they are proposing, to open up all of our coastal shores to offshore drilling and seismic exploration. It's, everything from the Arctic down, every single ocean that we touch is open now for offshore drilling. And in Connecticut, they're having one of the meetings that are supposed to be the public hearing meetings, which is sort of a farce because there's no public hearing. But we're going to have a big event out there, all the voices we can get to scream about this and make a big deal about it. You'll be hearing more. If you sign up for action alerts on our website, you'll be getting all this information going forward. And again, a scorecard is, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the league and kind of speak business. I'm going to bring Margaret out so she can tell you more about water in particular. But this is a recap of lawmakers' activities and how they voted on environmental issues, on the range of things that came before them at the Capitol, and we score them just like a report card. And every year this comes out, and you can see the trends of whether your lawmakers are doing well or not doing well, and you need to maybe persuade them a little bit to be a little bit better on some of the issues you care about. That's all in here. And we're based in Hartford, so if you have any questions or you need any more information, first our website. Then
could you give your website again?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's CTLCV.org, Connecticut League of Conservation Voters.org. So I've talked a little bit about energy and land, but I want Margaret to come up and talk about water. And I can Would you like me to pass out some of the scorecards, or do you want them to take them? What's that? On the way out?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm up here. And then I'll be here for any questions.
Do you all have other questions for Lori?
We good?
You were good.
Okay.
Well, that's probably something I need to know. It fell to my feet here, water protection. Very good. Is this microphone working okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm Margaret Miner. I'm the Executive Director of Rivers Alliance of Connecticut, and that is a 501c3. We work on protecting all the waters of Connecticut, above ground, below ground. A 501c3 can do a certain amount of lobbying. You should consult with your attorneys, but you can. And how much depends on various paperwork that you file. So I hope some of you will come perhaps to Hartford. One of the most effective ways you can lobby is to get the issues that you're interested in. If there is a bill or legislation, you can educate Laurie or educate me. I'm on her board. Part of that education will be the bill you're interested in gets on her watch list, on the CTLCV watch list. And when I first started this job, around 2000, I was clueless, but I went to a meeting at the league and I thought, oh great, I don't know how to lobby, but I'll just give my problems to them and let them lobby. That's what I only need to persuade the league, and then I can just follow along. So I do recommend that you keep up with, if it's environmental, you can get a bill on their watch list, if it's a good bill, and they will, legislators are very aware of that list, painfully aware. But Laurie has to field all the complaints, they'll never get back to you, so you can rest easy. Water. The state back in the 70s wrote some legislation that the state should have a water plan. And then in 2000, we still didn't have a water plan, so they said, okay, we'll have a water planning council. And then in 2014, there were always water problems in Connecticut, more water problems, and the state said, oh, yes, that water plan we were going to write in the 70s, let's get back to that. So for 2 years, we have been writing a water plan, a multi-stakeholder. That means that the environmental groups are typically somewhat outnumbered. We've been writing a water plan, which is more a compendium with some recommendations of water policies. It will go to the legislature this year. The legislature, it's not really a bill, it may be adopted. Two things I just wanted to tell you about water. One is, in the very last days of the plan, you may have heard the water, many of the people who commented on the plan said they would like to see a greater emphasis on the concept that water is a public trust. It belongs to the people. It is managed by the state for the benefit of the people as a trust, which means it has to be managed sustainably. It's not just the people here today. You can't use it all up pleasing everyone who's here today and then say you've done your fiduciary job. So it is to be managed sustainably with people as beneficiaries of this natural resource. Well, this granted somewhat amorphous principle that goes back to about biblical times. Who knew it would really be such a controversial issue that the Connecticut Waterworks Association said that they were hiring counsel to discuss this issue. They didn't think it should be given any more emphasis in the water plan. The Connecticut Business and Industry Association and home builders, they said also they were very disturbed. They didn't want to see anything about water as a public trust. Then Senator Fasano and Senator Winkos wrote a letter to the Water Planning Council. And the Water Planning Council is the people from the four agencies that do water. That's the Department of Public Health, OPM, and the Department of Public Utility, the Public Utility Regulatory Authority, which used to be standalone. Senators Fasano and Whitcomb wrote the Water Planning Council on a bill, on a water plan that was due to come to them in 2 weeks, saying, no, we want to see no more references to public trust. What you're planning to do, an additional mention of it, we don't want to see that. Very odd. So then, at least I think so. Then 2 days later, Senator Looney and Senator Beth Mai wrote another letter to the Water Planning Council saying, we regard the public trust in water as foundational and it should be in there. I'm happy to say that the pitiful little references to water as a public trust that are in the plan are still in the plan. The Water Planning Council voted unanimously with the Department of Public Health, which has doubts about all this, more or less abstaining. So you will hear, and many people from this part of the state have responded in defense of this concept, and it really is foundational. The Council on Environmental Quality took a vote a week ago that they regarded the concept of the public trust as foundational to environmental law in Connecticut and to their own existence, and so they are writing a position paper. So in terms of guiding principles, that is really something we're going to have to wrestle with. We are planning 2 conferences. One is going to be, I hope, on water supply law, which will deal with this later in the year. In the spring, Rivers Alliance is having a conference on water supply in Western Connecticut, particularly Northwest Connecticut. And you all might be interested in coming to that. Our Rivers Alliance, rivers@riversalliance.org is the email. If you go to Rivers Alliance website, you get every way to contact us, including my cell phone. Feel free to use it. It's rarely off. It'll probably ring now. It rings at funerals, rings wherever I am, it rings. So feel free to use that. Western Connecticut is, I'm not quite familiar. I think most of you are private wells up here. Most of Western Connecticut, the exclusive service area is Aquarion. Our water supply law is extremely complicated. One issue that has come up in discussions of a water plan and in many other venues is that people on private wells are kind of on their own. Their protections are minimal, both in terms of water quality and water quantity. In Washington, Connecticut, which is near where I am, water is being delivered in trucks and has been for the last 3 summers because we're water stressed, and for 2 of those 3 summers, we had a severe drought. I don't know if you felt it up here, if you've had sand coming out of your faucet occasionally, or had to dig a new well, but we are not paying enough attention to our water resources. They are our future. Around the world, people are looking for places that are cool, that have clean air, that have water. We are certainly cool, we have pretty clean air, we have water if we can keep it. But we're not doing a very good job of protecting it. And if you're on a private well, you probably need a little extra help, both to understand what's in your water and how to protect your good water. So that's what I have to say. And if you have questions, I don't know what the format is, but you can also ring that cell phone. Just let me get out of the room before you start.